Tsogo Sun, with a market cap of 20 billion rand, has one of the widest distributions of hotels in Africa, the Middle East and the Seychelles. A portfolio of 95 hotels with over 14,500 rooms. Last month, Tsogo Sun, a wholly owned subsidiary of Tsogo Sun, got the go-ahead to acquire an additional 52.6% interest in Hotel Formula One, bringing the Tsogo Sun Group's effective shareholding in Hotel Formula One to 100%. Tsogo Sun, do you have any appetite for this one in the gaming and leisure industry, as we've already qualified?
Okay, look, let's get this conversation started on a low note, as I always
This is what I was worried about at the beginning of the show, Paul. What must we brace ourselves for?
These guys like to present themselves as hotel and leisure and travel stocks, but they're not, because they make almost all of their money from their gambling take, which in the Southern African context is heavily regulated. You know, the government sets the margins on the tables. So they really use the hotel destination places like Sun City to attract people in, and then they make money from the gambling activities. And of course, gambling sounds like a very glamorous kind of a thing, but it really targets the lower middle income categories of people whose lives are desperate and who think that they can go to the casino in order to change everything. So it's not quite as dire as the lotto, but it's pretty much in that kind of space. So I don't regard these companies as socially useful at all.
So we're not going to get any hots from you tonight.
Definitely.
We're just clarifying that right up front.
Definitely not, although the history of each of them is different. The target market and the specific assets that they have is all slightly different. So it's worth talking about the strengths and weaknesses of the different stocks before I get started.
And Dan, a 20 billion market cap is nothing to sneeze at when you look at the assets in this group. Big brands like Tsogo Sun, Monte Casino, to name just a few.
Yeah, Silverstone Casino as well. They've got quite a few big brands. Going back to what Paul said about the industry, it seems to be quite dire, but there's a whole lot of factors that one has to take into consideration. I think firstly one has to look at consumer spending and discretionary spend and disposable income. Currently where global markets are and the economy, which is somewhat having really slow growth to start. And then we have the likes of food price inflation, petrol price inflation, now the new introduction of the tolls. So it's really adding extra pressure to the consumer, which leaves
less disposable income.
Correct. So, it's quite a difficult market to be in at the moment, although in the most previous quarter of reporting, the gaming stats were released and they were somewhat slightly better than expected. So
is it true what Paul is saying, though, that these companies make all of their money from gaming and they just pretend to be in the tourism and leisure environment?
Well, I think Paul earlier on Twitter, referred to these businesses as a disgrace, and I said I somewhat disagree. I think it's more of the economy that is somewhat not necessarily a disgrace, but very, very sluggish, which is adding pressure to all these businesses. But like most businesses, they rely on the economy to do well in global growth. So with less disposable income and all these extra costs coming in, like I said, petrol, food, tolls coming in, everyone's just got less money to actually go to the casino and take a punt and possibly lose and just be in a worse situation.
Let's turn this around on Paul. If we were told that one of the stocks that we're talking about tonight in the gaming and leisure environment was absolutely the 10-bagger of the future, would you invest in it? It's absolutely, there's no doubt, it is the 10-bagger of the future, but do you have a moral issue with investing in a gaming stock?
Look, I think you're right. You have to separate the moral issue from the investment prospects, because there are other stocks that I wouldn't own, like in the tobacco sector, which actually kill people. I don't think gambling kills that many people, although it can be very destructive for family life if you've got an inveterate gambler as your main breadwinner.
It sounds as though you may have a history in this space and you're now negating any affiliation with gaming.
So I think they are consumer stocks, and clearly there are lots of things that people waste money on that one shouldn't have a moral objective to. It's what people want to do, they can go ahead and do it. I think there is an issue with government regulation and pricing. And the other issue is that there is a big threat to the established casinos from online gaming. So we know that a lot of people play poker online using their credit card on international websites. That's revenue that doesn't come into the local industry. Because remember, gambling is very tightly regulated by governments because they don't want people engaging in illegal gambling where they can't collect taxes. This is a big source of tax revenue.
This is a very long way of answering the question. If this was for sure the 10-bagger of the future, would you invest in it?
Well, you're not going to find 10 baggers in this space because
If
you
it
can
was, I'm
only
saying
get
categorically it
a
is the
license to
10-bagger
run
of the
a
future.
gaming
Would you
institution.
invest in it, Paul?
Well, if I knew for a fact that something was going to be a big success financially, clearly I would invest in it.
Irrespective of the fact that it's in the gaming industry.
Yeah, but as I
Thank
say,
you.
there are
Thank you. We've
structural
got your
reasons why
answer.
that's not going to happen.
We've got your answer. Those structural reasons he's referring to is regulation in the gaming industry. Is it the biggest inhibitor to growth in this sector?
Yeah, most definitely. Nonetheless, there's just always different, challenges, and like I said, the most important one being disposable income. At the end of the day, that's how they make money. Their hotel business is also struggling. They've got low occupancy rate. I think a lot of businesses invested heavily for the World Cup and did renovations and built new hotels.
And now there's just excess capacity.
There's excess capacity. There's not so much demand and excessive supply, especially in Cape Town. And I think a lot of these businesses are struggling. So the occupancy rate, I think, at the moment across the board with all the hotels are around 52%. So, 1 out of every 2 nights they're full. So it doesn't really do justice. And with regard to your 10-bagger question, I think the simple answer is if anybody knows that something's a 10-bagger, I think regardless of the industry.
How long did he take to get to that answer? That's what I'm putting out there. A very long-winded response to my question. Hot or not for Tsogo Sun?
I don't know. Paul said, I think across the board, you're not hot. I'm somewhat lukewarm. I hope I'm allowed to be lukewarm today. And
I think I've allowed you once before, and I'll allow you
one
lukewarm
reason.
today.
I'm going to be lukewarm on all the stocks, and we'll go through each one as
We
to
are
why.
going to. Don't jump the gun, guys. You can't give me your answers all ahead before we even get into the show.
Just quickly, they pay a decent dividend. They pay a 4% dividend yield, and which is not bad in the industry. If money market rates are at 6%, you're getting a 4% dividend, excluding any sort of growth in the actual share price. It's probably not the worst investment, although a huge punt, and I don't know if I would personally like to be invested, but I think there is some room for the certain sector to be included in your portfolio.
I'll give you lukewarm. Not hot.
What is hot about Tsogo is the potential for the shares in Tsogo that are held by HCI, because both HCI and SAB Miller own about 37% of this company. That's why it trades so badly. What is hot is to buy HCI, because they're probably going to unbundle these shares, which will result in a bit of an unlock. So if you're really looking for the hot in this space, it's HCI.